Brad Scott, welcome to the program, coach of the North Melbourne Football Club.
Yeah, it's good to be part of Comedy Hour.
Small things amuse small minds, Brad.
That's very good, Tim.
What
Very
amuse
good
me.
indeed. How are you?
Very well, thanks.
Yeah,
excited.
good to have you in here.
Yeah, excited for the season to start, although it's already started, so it's a long, anxious wait for, I suppose, Collingwood, North Melbourne, Geelong and Hawthorn not playing for quite a while.
Just on that, and how did Clubland feel about that, about the split opening round?
Look, it's not ideal, but I think we all completely understand why. I mean, I think that the cricket issue and the ground availability issue is something that the AFL are working really hard on rectifying, but I think we'd all like to kick off the season with everyone playing, within a couple of days of each other. But on the other hand, it's a good opportunity to get some standalone games in some different states.
Great opportunity for you guys too to almost mark your territory right away. I mean, it's a long season. It's never about round one, but round one does take on this kind of round one importance. To get Collingwood first up's a great opportunity for you and your boys.
Yeah, it is, and for a number of reasons. Not only for all our fans to get out and watch us play, they've had their way with us over the last couple of years. We were able to get one back last year, late in the season, one of our best games for the year. So they'll be a little bit stung from that, and we'll be looking to get our season off to a good start as well.
Ask James Brayshaw the same question. You got a tough draw this year. Is it possible, and we've kicked this around on this program, is it possible that you could actually be better as a group this year and not necessarily win as many games or finish as high on the ladder?
I've got very little doubt we'll be better. The tough thing at this time of the year is working out how much better everyone else is going to be. So we'll improve. I mean, we welcome the fixture. I mean, we've got, you look at the first 5 rounds, we've got Collingwood, Geelong, Sydney, the premiers of the last 3 years. And then most people said, well, it's an easier game against Brisbane at Etihad. Well, that's not looking too easy anymore. And then Hawthorn round 5. So, the bottom line is that we've got to be up and going, got to be playing well early. But the flip side is we win those, we're in with a real show.
Brad, did you dwell on that last loss that you had last year in that final at all against the West Coast Eagles?
I think it's impossible not to. We've had some pretty demoralising losses over the last 3 years, and after every single one of those, we've come out and won the next week. So this next week has been a long time in waiting. So, I mean, like I always do after a really poor defeat, even after a win, I mean, I analyse it very closely. And we played as poorly as we had all year. And it was just disappointing. It was on the biggest stage of all. So the 13 players who are playing in their first final have now got that out of the way. And we've just got to make sure that next time we get that opportunity, we take it.
From a tactical point of view, we often hear that, or hear people criticise clubs and coaches for being like sheep and following whatever the latest trend is. How much did Sydney's win and the way they played, do you think, will affect the way other clubs are trying to play their footy from now?
Well, it appears that some clubs have followed that method through the pre-season. I mean, we've only got a very small sample size, but footy seems to be going back to a very one-on-one bias, and Sydney certainly play that way. So, I think that the different clubs will look at their list and see where they can get a tactical advantage. But I still think we're going to see a significant evolution in the way the game's played. And I think there's always huge risk in just following the leader. I was always mildly amused when Brisbane were going through their premiership era that sides tried to emulate what we had at Brisbane. And the common perception was that we were a big, strong team that could outmuscle sides, when the reality was, internal, we had Sean Hart, Simon Black, just elite endurance runners. So the fact is, you don't know exactly what other teams are doing, so you take little bits and pieces, but you've got to focus on yourself and come up with the next tactical advantage.
You kind of created a bit of a blueprint for yourselves a couple of years ago when you decided to invest really heavily in the draft and build a list through the draft. And I guess there was really careful consideration given to the types of players you brought in back then to become the players that you want them to be through that window that you explained to us in a meeting that we had at North Melbourne a couple of years ago, that 2014 to 16 was going to be that period. Are you on course? Do you feel like it's evolving in front of you the way that you thought it would?
Yeah, we haven't had to deviate from course. I mean, there are things intangibles in footy that you look really closely at and you try and find your advantage against other sides, but there are certain factual things that you just can't get away from. And now age and experience, games experience are facts. I mean, that we can't change those in the short term. So, we know that over the next 3 years our list is starting to mature, and our challenge is to make sure that we coach them as well as we possibly can and develop them as well as we can, because the facts are at the moment we still rank 14th in age in the competition, and we rank 14th in games experience. And in terms of players under 25, only GWS and Gold Coast have got more players under 25 than we have. So it's really exciting for the future, and that's not to discount the present, because I think we showed in the second half of last year that, when we play our style of footy, it can be pretty effective.
Is there a frustration in you that you wish you could make them be a bit older and a bit more experienced?
Well, I think that's why we haven't deviated off course, because the temptation is just to say, no, we can't expose these young guys to these experienced teams anymore. We could have easily put Michael Frito back in the midfield where he's played a fair bit, 5 or 6 years ago, and Brady Rawlings when he was still there. But we wanted to expose Cunnington and Zeeble and Swallow and Bastanak and Adams and all these guys, and I think we're seeing the reward for that now. We certainly went through some pretty tough times there, and but I've got real confidence in the future.
Part of that experience would be their endurance capabilities. Is there a noticeable change in what your players are capable of doing from this pre-season as opposed to, say, the pre-season before that?
I think that the last 2 pre-seasons have been absolutely extraordinary in terms of all coaches at this time of year and sports scientists talk about loads and all those sorts of things. But, I mean, the things that we can measure have almost doubled, over a 2-year period. So, I mean, that's pretty enormous, in a game that is at the elite level. But I think the intangible, again, is go and have a look at games from a year to 2 years ago, and, I felt like like a sadistic coach sending out 18-year-olds against some hardened players. But, Ben Cunnington in particular is a completely different looking footballer today than he was even 12 months ago. So, that's one of the great satisfaction out of being a coach, is that you can watch young players develop really well.
You talk about sports scientists. Andrew Demetriou was chatting about him last night on the couch, and he admitted that it was one of the mistakes on his watch, that he hadn't watched the evolution of this industry in footy as closely as he might have. This is a bit of what he had to say.
I think I might have even been on this program 12 months ago talking about the influence that sports scientists were having at football clubs. We should have intervened a lot earlier, and I think even when I came out and talked about that, there was outrage from some quarters about sports scientists have got a place, and they may very well have a place, and there are some very fine ones. But there were certain things going on, certain practices going on, particularly with marginalising our club doctors, which is unacceptable.
Details are still, to be revealed at Essendon and with the NRL clubs. But have you had to investigate and review your own internal policies and people at North Melbourne, given what's happening elsewhere?
Certainly not our people. We've got absolute faith and trust in the processes that we go through in employing our staff. But I think it's a healthy thing to review your processes internally all the time, and we do that regularly. But Steve Saunders, our head of sports science, has been an unbelievable acquisition for us, and our injury rate reflects that. And he's I can't speak highly enough of him, and I can't speak highly enough of his integrity either. So I think when Andrew makes that point, I think he makes a valid point. But what I didn't hear there was him stressing that is the absolute minority. Like, we're talking about a tiny percentage of people in a pretty big industry. So
he did say in the greater part of the interview, he did say that, just to be fair to him.
Because
I think that's a really important point, because sports science definitely has its place. No one wants to admit to being a sports scientist right at the moment.
Change it.
Right? But right at football clubs, I think that reviewing internal processes are important, but the vast majority are of the highest integrity.
What was it Cheese was saying, the GPS?
Get rid of GPS, he said last night, Kevin Sheedy.
He didn't say get rid of it. But
Did he? Okay. Because he gets lost. That's why.
So it's taken over the game, GPS data.
Yeah, well, I can honestly say that GPS data is a very, very small piece of the puzzle. And look, we at North Melbourne, we have a coach-driven football program. And the way we look at sports science is they enable us to coach our players, not the other way around. I mean, all of this stuff that you hear about, sports science staff won't let players kick the ball, they won't let them train. Now, we rely on our sports science staff to prepare our players and condition them well enough so that we can put the coaching into them and we can get them out in the track and train them, because they're footballers after all, and sports science play a really important role, but they certainly don't drive the program at North.
Feels like a beautiful fireside chat all of a sudden, doesn't it? Jose Feliciano in the background there. It is North Melbourne Membership Day. Brad Scott's our special guest. Give them a call, 1300 5 266 427, or visit kangaroos.com.au to join us.
What was the number, Andy?
1300 526 there's a little half a six in there. 427 1300 526 427. North Melbourne coach Brad Scott's our very special guest. Have you picked the side for Sunday yet? Do you know who your 22 is?
Well, I definitely know who our 25 is.
25 is,
and that's look. I mean, match committee is always the same. I mean, your 20 is pretty much set in stone. You're trying to work out the last few positions, and we're in a tough position at the moment, which is fortunate. I mean, we've got a number of players who are vying for the same spot. I mean, the obvious one is Goldstein versus Curry, and that's far from decided at this stage. So that could go either way, and a few positions in defence as well. And without McMahon and Harvey available due to suspension, a couple of guys might get an opportunity.
With that, in deciding between, say, Goldstein and Curry, is that as to which guy might be able to go forward and perform better than the other?
A little bit, but I think that with Drew Petrie and Robbie Tarrant and Aaron Black, Mad Jack Daw, Lockie Hansen, we've got the calibre of players that can play those roles, but it's just working out which are going to work and combine the best together. So, what we pretty much decided, and I'm sure Collingwood are the same, most other teams are the same, is that when you've got at least two good, strong key forwards, it's almost impossible now to play the second ruckman. So when everyone talked about this hysteria around the death of the second ruckman, well, he's dead. I mean, he doesn't exist anymore. The only teams that play genuine second ruckman are those who have got Nick Nat Nui, or those that don't have another genuinely big, strong key forward. So the game has changed.
Yeah.
Can I ask you your thoughts on the equalisation debate? And last night Andrew was talking about if we don't put a cap on footy department spending, maybe we could do like Formula One and put a cap on the number of people you can have in a football department. What are your thoughts on that whole thing about, because your club's obviously down the lower end, and I guess where does it affect you most?
Look, I think by far the area that the equalisation debate, and I'm glad it's been focused on where it should be, and that is allowing each club to pay 100% of the TPP. I mean, that is the most critical part of equalisation. I mean, we've got a smaller football department than some, but we think it's got absolute quality, and we think that we can compete with any club based on the resources we've got at North. I mean, all our players feel like they've got everything they need to perform. But if we can't pay our players over the long term, I mean, there's a significant difference. I mean, some clubs who haven't been able to pay their TPP in full over the last 5 years are roughly about $3 million short in paying their players. And when that amount gets prepaid every year, I mean, there would be outrage, I'm sure, if North Melbourne went out and recruited Buddy Franklin, Brendan Goddard and Dale Thomas. But that's in effect... Going short on your TPP every year, that's in effect what you're giving up over a 5-year period.
So there's a fair bit about what you've developed down there that players are signing up and not jumping off the ship, aren't they? I mean, you seem to be doing a really good job at retaining players down there.
Yeah, no, I think that all you can do as a coach is set up a really good environment and sell the players the vision of the footy club and where we're going. And if you do that really well, then your players want to stay. And so far so good with us, but we know that if the TPP issue is not sorted out, and I'm talking about right now, because there's always a lag period, if they fix the TPP issue today, there'd still be a lag period of about 2 or 3 years because other clubs have been prepaying their salary cap. So even for us to catch up, it's got to be fixed right now, and we'd have to wait 2 years to be back on an even keel. So, I mean, that's got to be fixed right now.
Well, that's big picture stuff. The focus for you is this weekend, and we wish you all the very best and what lies beyond that. Thanks for coming in today.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Brad Scott, coach of the North Melbourne Footy Club. It is their membership day right across the board here on 1116 SEN. Give them a call to pledge 1300 526 427 or visit the website kangaroos.com.au to join the spirit then, now and forever.